He cheated on her. But her smile was the first warning. Lauren Hayes wasn't supposed to see the message. That's what made it worse. Not the violation of privacy, but the accident of truth. Blake's phone had been sitting on the kitchen counter, face up, charging. Innocent. Unremarkable. Lauren had been chopping vegetables for dinner, her hands moving through the familiar rhythm of Thursday evening when the screen lit up. A preview notification. Just enough words to detonate everything. Alyssa, last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you. Lauren's hands stopped moving. The knife hovered above a half-cut bell pepper. She stared at the words like they were written in a language she almost understood but couldn't quite translate. Last night, Blake had said he was working late. He'd come home after 11, showered immediately, said he was exhausted. She set the knife down carefully, picked up his phone, set it back down exactly where it had been, angled the same way, still charging. Her heart wasn't racing. That was the strange part. She felt quiet, hollow, like someone had reached inside her chest and removed something vital, and her body hadn't figured out yet how to panic about it. The shower shut off upstairs. She heard Blake moving around in the bedroom, the familiar sounds of him getting dressed, humming something under his breath. Happy. He sounded happy. Lauren went back to chopping vegetables. When Blake came downstairs 5 minutes later, hair still damp, wearing the gray Henley she'd bought him last Christmas, he found her at the stove, stirring pasta sauce like nothing in the world had changed. "Hey," he said, kissing her temple in that absent way he'd developed lately, his mind already somewhere else. "What's for dinner?" "Pasta," Lauren said. Her voice came out steady. "Normal. Should be ready in 15. "Perfect. I'm starving." He grabbed his phone from the counter, unlocked it, scrolled. Lauren watched him from the corner of her eye. His expression didn't change. No guilt, no panic. He pocketed the phone and leaned against the counter. "How was your day?" "Fine," she said. "Boring, you know. The usual." Blake nodded, already losing interest, and started talking about some campaign pitch he'd nailed at work. Lauren made the appropriate sounds, small laughs, affirming hums, while her hands moved through the mechanical tasks of cooking. Drain the pasta, plate the food, set the table. And the whole time, a part of her brain she didn't recognize was asking a very calm, very clear question. What are you going to do? That was 3 days ago. 3 days of Lauren moving through her life like an actress playing a role she'd already memorized. 3 days of smiling at the right moments, asking Blake about his day, sleeping next to him in their bed, while her mind spun through the evidence she'd been too willfully blind to see before. Because once you noticed one thing, you noticed everything. The way Blake had started showering the moment he walked through the door, instead of collapsing on the couch like he used to. The cologne he'd suddenly started wearing to the office, the expensive one he saved for special occasions. The password on his phone that had appeared out of nowhere 2 months ago, framed as a security measure after some article he'd read about data breaches. The late nights, the client dinners that never quite made it onto his work calendar when Lauren casually checked, pretending she was just coordinating their schedules. The distracted way he touched her now, when he touched her at all, like his hands were going through motions his brain had stopped participating in. And the name. Alyssa. Blake had started mentioning her about 6 weeks ago, casual at first, just another colleague on his team. Then, more frequently. Alyssa had this great idea for the rebrand. Alyssa really understood his creative vision. Alyssa was so sharp, so intuitive, not like the other people at his level who just didn't get it. Lauren had listened, had asked polite follow-up questions, had ignored the small, tight feeling in her chest that she'd trained herself not to call jealousy because jealousy was unattractive, and Lauren had learned a long time ago that the way to keep someone was to need them as little as possible. Now, sitting at her desk at work on a Friday afternoon, staring at a spreadsheet she'd lost track of 15 minutes ago, Lauren understood that the tightness in her chest hadn't been jealousy. It had been her instincts trying to tell her something her conscious mind refused to hear. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't paranoid. She was just finally, brutally awake. Her phone buzzed. A text from Blake, "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." Lauren typed back, "Okay, be safe." She added a heart emoji, sent it, set her phone down. Across the office, her colleague Marcus was complaining loudly about a vendor who'd missed a deadline. 2 desks over, someone laughed at a video on their phone. The normal sounds of a Friday winding down. And Lauren sat perfectly still, feeling like she was watching all of it from underwater. When did it start? Not the cheating. She didn't know when that started. Didn't know if that text message had been about an actual night together, or just an emotional affair that hadn't crossed into physical yet. But when did this start? When did she become someone who accepted breadcrumbs and called it a meal? When did she start translating her needs into smaller, more digestible versions so Blake wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable? When did she lose her voice? Lauren closed the spreadsheet without saving it, shut down her computer, left work 20 minutes early, and no one noticed or cared. The apartment felt different when Lauren knew she was alone in it by design rather than by circumstance. She stood in the kitchen, the same spot where she'd seen the message 3 days ago, and looked around like she was seeing the space for the first time. The succulents on the windowsill that she watered every Sunday, the grocery list on the fridge in her handwriting, the coffee maker she'd bought after researching models for 2 weeks because Blake was particular about his coffee. Evidence of her life. Evidence of her labor. All of it invisible to anyone who wasn't looking. Lauren opened the fridge. They were low on milk. She'd noticed this morning and had mentally added it to the shopping list she'd run this weekend. Blake had poured the last of it into his coffee, hadn't mentioned they were out, because he knew Lauren would notice. Lauren always noticed. She closed the fridge, sat down on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinets, and for the first time since she'd seen that message, Lauren let herself feel it. Not crying. She didn't cry, but something cracked open in her chest, something that had been holding itself together through sheer force of will, and the truth came flooding in. Blake was leaving her. Maybe he hadn't said it out loud yet. Maybe he hadn't even consciously decided it, but he was leaving her in every way that mattered emotionally, physically, mentally. He was already gone. He was just keeping her around until he had somewhere better to land. And the worst part, the part that made Lauren press her palms against her eyes and breathe very carefully, was that she'd felt it happening. She'd felt him pulling away, felt his attention drifting, felt herself becoming optional in her own relationship. And instead of confronting it, instead of demanding clarity, she'd made herself smaller, easier, less demanding. She'd tried to win him back by requiring less of him. God, when did she become this person? Lauren's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. Another text from Blake, might be really late. This campaign is killing me. She stared at the message. Typed, do what you need to do. Deleted it. Typed, okay, hope it goes well. Sent it. Set the phone face, down on the floor next to her. The apartment was so quiet. Lauren could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the muffled sounds of the neighbors upstairs moving around, the distant traffic from the street below. All the sounds of life happening around her while she sat on the kitchen floor of an apartment she shared with someone who was sharing himself with someone else. How long was she supposed to do this? How long was she supposed to pretend she didn't know? How long was she supposed to keep performing the role of the understanding girlfriend while Blake auditioned her replacement? What are you going to do? The question was back. Insistent. Clear. Lauren didn't know yet. But sitting there on the kitchen floor, she made one decision. She wasn't going to fall apart. Not visibly. Not in a way that Blake could see and use to write the narrative of their ending. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of her tears, her anger, her desperation. She was going to stay quiet. She was going to watch. And she was going to figure out who the hell she was underneath 6 years of making herself smaller for a man who'd stopped seeing her anyway. By the time Blake came home that night, 12:47 a.m., Lauren saw the time when she heard his key in the lock. She was in bed with the lights off, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She heard him move quietly through the apartment. Heard the bathroom door close, the shower turn on. 20 minutes later, he slipped into bed beside her, smelling like unfamiliar soap. You awake? He whispered. Lauren kept her breathing steady, didn't answer. Blake sighed, rolled over, and within minutes was asleep. Lauren lay there in the dark next to him and felt like she was lying next to a stranger. Maybe she always had been. Maybe she'd just been too busy playing the part of the perfect girlfriend to notice that she didn't actually know this person. Not really. She knew his coffee order and his mother's birthday and the way he liked his shirts folded, but she didn't know his character, didn't know what he was capable of, didn't know if he'd ever actually loved her or just loved how easy she made his life. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, Lauren finally fell asleep. And when she woke up Saturday morning, Blake was already gone. A note on the kitchen counter, early gym session. Back later. Lauren crumpled the note and threw it away. Then she made herself breakfast, sat at the table alone, and started making a list. The list wasn't dramatic. It wasn't evidence of Blake's betrayal or a plan for revenge. It was simpler than that, and somehow more frightening. It was a list of things Lauren had stopped doing, stopped saying, stopped being. Things I gave up. Painting, he said the smell of the oils gave him headaches. Thursday dinners with Monica, he liked having me home on weeknights. The ceramics class I wanted to take, he thought it was a waste of money. Talking about my work, his eyes glazed over when I did. Saying when something bothered me, he said I was being too sensitive. Asking him to help with housework, it was easier to just do it myself. Having opinions about where we ate, what we watched, how we spent weekends, he had stronger preferences, so I just went along. Lauren stared at the list. Added one more item. Believing my feelings were valid without external proof. She set down the pen, looked at what she'd written, and felt something shift in her chest. Not the hollow ache from before, but something harder. Something with edges. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold kind. The kind that clarified instead of clouded. She'd done this to herself. Blake had taken advantage, yes. Blake had been selfish and dishonest and cruel in that passive way that people were cruel when they'd decided you didn't matter, but hadn't bothered to tell you yet. But Lauren had handed him the blueprint. She'd shown him exactly how little he needed to give her for her to stay. She'd trained him to treat her as optional. And now she was paying the price. The front door opened. Blake came in, gym bag slung over his shoulder, face flushed from working out. He looked good. Healthy. Happy. "Hey," he said, heading to the kitchen for water. "What are you up to?" Lauren folded the list and slipped it into her pocket. "Nothing, just making some notes for work." Blake nodded, already pulling out his phone, scrolling while he drank. "I'm gonna shower and then maybe we can grab lunch somewhere?" It was phrased like a question, but Lauren knew it wasn't really. It was Blake checking a box, putting in the minimum effort to maintain the appearance of a relationship. "Sure," Lauren said. "Wherever you want." Blake smiled, distracted. "Cool, give me 20 minutes. He disappeared upstairs. Lauren heard the shower start. She pulled the list back out of her pocket, looked at it one more time. Then she tore it into small pieces and threw it away. She didn't need to keep it. She'd already memorized every word. Lunch was at the place Blake liked, the trendy bistro with the small plates and the exposed brick that he thought made him look sophisticated. Lauren ordered a salad and let Blake talk about his morning workout, his upcoming campaign, the guy at the gym who kept using the equipment wrong. She made appropriate noises, asked follow-up questions, laughed when he told a story designed to be funny. And the whole time she watched him. Really watched him. Not with the soft focus lens of someone in love, but with the clear, sharp vision of someone taking inventory. Blake was handsome in a generic way, the kind of face that photographed well, that made a good first impression. He knew it too. He dressed well, kept himself in shape, cultivated an image of effortless confidence that Lauren used to find attractive but now recognized as performance. He was charming. That had been the initial draw, the way he could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they were the only person worth talking to. But Lauren saw now that the charm was a tool. It wasn't about making people feel good, it was about making Blake feel powerful. He collected attention the way some people collected art. And he was small. Not physically, but in the ways that mattered. He was small in his empathy, in his curiosity about other people, in his capacity to see anyone else as the main character of their own story instead of supporting cast in his. Lauren had spent 6 years trying to be enough for someone who would never think anyone was enough, because that would require seeing them clearly enough to measure. "You're quiet today," Blake said, pulling her back to the present. He was looking at her with mild curiosity, the way you'd look at a TV show you were only half watching. Lauren smiled. "Just tired. Work's been a lot." "You work too hard," Blake said. It sounded like sympathy, but there was an edge of criticism underneath. An implication that her exhaustion was a personal failing, rather than a reasonable response to a demanding job. "Maybe," Lauren said. Blake's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and Lauren saw something flicker across his face. a micro-expression of pleasure, quickly controlled. He silenced the phone without responding and set it face down on the table. Lauren knew it was Alyssa. Knew it the same way you knew it was going to rain from the smell of the air. And she knew Blake knew that she knew on some level. But he was gambling that she'd never call him on it. That she'd stay quiet. That she'd keep making it easy for him. Actually, Blake said, his tone shifting to something rehearsed, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Lauren's pulse jumped, but she kept her face neutral. Okay. Blake did this thing he did when he was about to say something he thought might be received poorly. He leaned forward slightly, made direct eye contact, used his sincere voice. I think I need some space. Not from you, he added quickly. Just, in general. Work's been intense, and I feel like I need more time to focus on my career. To really invest in this next phase, you know? Lauren knew exactly what this was. This was Blake creating distance. This was him building the scaffolding for their breakup while keeping her on the hook until he'd fully secured whatever he had going with Alyssa. The old Lauren, the Lauren from a week ago, would have panicked. Would have asked what she could do to support him. Would have bent herself into whatever shape he needed. Would have made herself even smaller to prove she wasn't a burden. But the Lauren sitting here now, the one who'd spent 3 days watching her boyfriend lie to her face, felt something different. She felt clarity. Okay, Lauren said simply. Blake blinked. Okay? Yeah, if you need space, I understand. He looked almost disappointed, like he'd been expecting a fight and didn't know what to do with her easy agreement. So, you're okay with us spending less time together? If that's what you need, then yes. Blake studied her for a moment, and Lauren could see him trying to figure out if this was a trap. But she just smiled, that same small, controlled smile she'd been wearing for 3 days, and took a sip of her water. Great, Blake said finally, though he sounded uncertain. I mean, it's not permanent or anything? Just while I'm dealing with this campaign? Of course, Lauren said. They finished lunch with Blake seeming slightly off balance, and Lauren feeling strangely powerful. She'd given him exactly what he'd asked for, which meant he couldn't make her the villain. But more than that, she'd given herself something too, permission to stop trying. Permission to step back and observe instead of performing. Permission to start planning. Over the next 2 weeks, Lauren became a student of her own life. She watched the way Blake moved through their shared space with increasing carelessness, leaving dishes in the sink that he knew Lauren would wash, dropping laundry on the floor that he knew she'd pick up, making plans without consulting her and then acting surprised when she had thoughts about it. She watched the way he talked to her in front of their friends. Not cruel exactly, but dismissive. Talking over her. Explaining things she already understood. Making small jokes at her expense that everyone laughed at, because Blake had that gift of making meanness seem charming. She watched the way he'd pull out his phone mid-conversation with her, scroll through texts, smile at something she wasn't part of. The way his face lit up when his phone buzzed at night, then dimmed when he saw it was just some notification instead of whoever he was hoping for. And she watched herself. Watched the automatic ways she'd learned to accommodate him. The way she'd make herself smaller in doorways to let him pass. The way she'd lower her voice when his was raised. The way she'd apologize reflexively when he was irritated, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. It was like watching a nature documentary about a species she thought she understood but had actually never really seen before, the woman who disappears in plain sight. But Lauren wasn't just watching. She was planning. Nothing dramatic, no revenge schemes, just practical preparations for a life that didn't include Blake. She opened a new bank account at a different bank. Transferred a small amount of money at first, then more. Nothing Blake would notice from their shared expenses, because Lauren had always managed their finances and Blake had never looked closely enough to see how it worked. She started redirecting her paychecks, half to their joint account for bills, half to her new private one, building a cushion. Building an exit fund. She went through the apartment when Blake was at work and identified what was hers, what was his, what they'd bought together. She didn't pack anything. Didn't remove anything. Just noted it. Made a mental inventory. She looked at apartment listings online during her lunch breaks. Nothing serious yet. Just getting a sense of the market, of what she could afford, of what independence would cost. And she stopped doing the invisible labor. Not all at once. That would have been noticeable. But gradually. She stopped reminding Blake about his mother's birthday. Stopped picking up his prescriptions. Stopped making his coffee in the morning. Stopped asking about his day when he came home. She stayed polite. stayed pleasant. But she stopped performing the role of emotional manager, of life coordinator, of the person who made everything run smoothly. And Blake didn't notice. That was the thing that would have been devastating if Lauren hadn't already been operating from a place of cold clarity. He didn't notice that she'd stopped taking care of him because he'd never noticed that she had been. The only person who noticed was Monica. They met for coffee on a Wednesday evening. Lauren had started saying yes to Monica's invitations again, had stopped checking with Blake first to see if he needed her home. Monica took one look at her across the table and said, "What happened?" Lauren had rehearsed this conversation, had planned to keep it vague, to protect her own processing time. But something about Monica's directness, about the way her oldest friend looked at her with such clear concern, cracked something open. "Blake's cheating on me," Lauren said. The words came out flat. Factual. Monica's eyes went wide. "What? How do you know? Did you—" "I saw a text message, and I've been watching him for 2 weeks. It's not subtle." "Jesus, Lauren." Monica reached across the table, grabbed her hand. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Have you confronted him?" "No." "Why not?" Lauren pulled her hand back gently, wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "Because I'm not ready yet." "Ready for what?" "To leave." Monica stared at her. You're going to leave him?" "Yes." "When?" "I don't know yet. Soon." Monica leaned back in her chair, studying Lauren's face. "You seem really calm about this." "I'm not calm," Lauren said. "I'm just clear." "What does that mean?" Lauren tried to find the words. "It means I spent 6 years being confused, being uncertain, questioning myself, wondering if I was asking for too much or not enough, wondering why I felt invisible, and now I know. Now I understand exactly what's been happening and exactly what I need to do about it. Which is leave." "Which is leave?" Monica nodded slowly. "Do you need a place to stay? You can crash with me, you know that." "I know, thank you. But I want my own place. I'm looking." "Does he know? That you know?" "No." "And you're just living with him? Pretending everything's fine?" Lauren took a sip of coffee. It had gone lukewarm. "I'm not pretending everything's fine. I'm just not making it his problem until I'm ready." "That's—" Monica shook her head. "That's actually kind of badass." Lauren smiled. A real smile, not the controlled one she'd been wearing. "I don't feel badass. I feel like I'm walking around with a grenade in my chest and I'm just waiting for the right moment to pull the pin." "What's the right moment?" "I don't know yet. I'll know when it happens." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Monica said quietly, "I'm proud of you." Lauren looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For not falling apart. For not begging him to stay. For not making yourself smaller to keep someone who doesn't deserve you." Lauren felt her throat tighten. "I almost did. When I first found out, part of me wanted to fix it, to figure out what I'd done wrong, to win him back." "What changed?" "I realized I didn't want to win a competition I never agreed to enter." Monica raised her coffee cup. "To not competing for assholes." Lauren laughed, a real, surprised laugh that felt like sun breaking through clouds. She clinked her cup against Monica's. "To not competing for assholes." Walking back to her car later, Lauren felt lighter than she had in weeks. Not happy, exactly, but less alone. Less like she was losing her mind. Monica had heard what she'd said and hadn't told her she was overreacting, hadn't suggested couples therapy, hadn't implied that maybe if Lauren just communicated better or tried harder or was more understanding, Blake wouldn't stray. Monica had just believed her, had validated that what was happening was wrong, and that Lauren had every right to leave. It was such a small thing, such an obvious thing, but Lauren realized how long it had been since someone had simply believed her perception of her own life without questioning it. How long it had been since she'd believed it herself. The shift came at work of all places. Lauren was in a meeting with Richard, her supervisor, going over the quarterly operational review. She'd prepared extensively, she always did, and was walking him through the efficiency improvements her team had implemented, the cost savings, the reduction in project delays. Richard listened, nodding, making notes. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "This is excellent work, Lauren. Really excellent." "Thank you." "I mean it. You've essentially rebuilt our entire operational infrastructure in 18 months, and you did it so smoothly that most people didn't even notice it was happening. Lauren felt a small glow of pride, but also something else. Something uncomfortable. That was kind of the point. Good operations are invisible. True, Richard said. But that also means good operations managers are invisible, and I'm wondering if that's serving you. Lauren blinked. What do you mean? I mean, you're incredibly competent. You see systems, you identify problems before they become crises, you build solutions that last. But you do it all so quietly that the people who should be noticing, executives, board members, potential investors, don't see it. They don't see you. Lauren felt something prickle at the back of her neck. I'm not really interested in visibility for its own sake. I know. That's part of what makes you good at what you do. Richard pulled out a folder from his desk. But there's an opportunity I want to talk to you about. We're launching a new initiative, integrating our project management systems across all departments. It's going to require someone who understands operations at a strategic level, who can lead cross-functional teams, who can interface with senior leadership. He slid the folder across the desk to her. I want you to lead it. Lauren opened the folder, scanned the overview. It was exactly the kind of challenge she'd love. Complex, high-impact, requiring both technical expertise and interpersonal skills. It was also exactly the kind of thing that would require her to be visible, to present to executives, to defend her decisions, to take up space. This would be a significant step up, Richard said. More responsibility, more visibility, and frankly, a significant raise. But it would also mean you can't hide behind the scenes anymore. You'd be front and center. Lauren looked up from the folder. Why me? Because you're the best person for it, and because I think you're ready to stop making yourself invisible. The words hit her like a physical thing. Stop making yourself invisible. Can I think about it? Lauren asked. Of course. Take a week. But Lauren? Richard waited until she met his eyes. You're better at this than you think you are. Or maybe you know how good you are, and you've just been trained to think that's something to apologize for. Either way, it's time to stop apologizing. Lauren left the meeting with the folder in her hands, and Richard's words ringing in her ears. Stop making yourself invisible. She sat in her car in the parking lot and opened the folder again. Read through the project scope, the timeline, the team structure. It would mean longer hours, at least at first. More stress. More visibility, which meant more opportunities to fail publicly. The old Lauren would have cataloged all the reasons to say no. Would have worried about how Blake would react to her being busier, more distracted, less available. Would have wondered if she was really qualified or if Richard was just being nice. But the new Lauren, the one who'd been quietly building herself in the spaces between Blake's lies, asked a different question. What do I want? And the answer was immediate and clear. I want this. She wanted the challenge. Wanted to use her skills for something that mattered, something that would be seen. Wanted to stop hiding her competence like it was something shameful. And more than that, she wanted to invest in herself the way she'd been investing in Blake for 6 years. Wanted to pour her energy into her own growth, instead of into maintaining someone else's comfort. Lauren pulled out her phone and texted Richard, I'm in, let's do it. His response came 30 seconds later. I knew you would be. Let's meet Friday to discuss timeline. Lauren set her phone down and just sat there for a moment, letting it sink in. She'd said yes. She'd claimed something for herself. And she'd done it without checking with Blake first, without considering how it would affect his needs, without making herself smaller to fit into his life. It felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. When she got home that evening, Blake was already there, sprawled on the couch with his laptop, barely looking up when she walked in. Hey, he said, eyes still on his screen. Hey, Lauren replied. She set her bag down, kicked off her shoes. What's for dinner? Blake asked, and there it was. The automatic assumption that Lauren would cook, would manage, would take care of it. The same assumption that had governed their relationship for 6 years. I don't know, Lauren said. What are you making? Blake looked up, surprised. What? I'm asking what you're making for dinner. I have work to do tonight. Blake's confusion was almost comical. I thought you were going to cook. Why would you think that? Because you always cook on Wednesdays. I'm not cooking tonight, so you can either make something, order something, or fend for yourself. Lauren walked past him to the bedroom, leaving Blake staring after her with an expression she would have found satisfying if she'd bothered to look back. She closed the bedroom door, sat down at the small desk they never used, and opened her laptop. She had a project to plan, a future to build. For the first time in 6 years, Blake would have to figure out dinner on his own. The unraveling happened slowly at first, then all at once. Blake started testing boundaries, pushing to see if Lauren's new unavailability was temporary or permanent. He'd ask her to do things, pick up his dry cleaning, call his mother, rearrange her schedule to accommodate his plans, and Lauren would simply say no. Not with anger or explanation, just, "No, I can't do that." It confused him. She could see it in the way he'd pause, recalibrate, try a different approach. He'd be sweet, then frustrated, then dismissive, cycling through strategies to get her back to her old patterns of accommodation. But Lauren had found something in herself that wouldn't bend anymore, some foundational certainty that she'd been building in the quiet spaces of the past 3 weeks, brick by brick, until it was solid enough to stand on. She didn't owe Blake her labor. She didn't owe him her management of his life. She didn't owe him her silence about his betrayal. She didn't owe him anything at all. One evening, Blake came home later than usual, not late enough to trigger questions, just late enough to be noticeable. He was in a good mood, almost manic with it, and Lauren knew immediately that he'd been with Alyssa. He talked through dinner, takeout that he'd picked up after Lauren had made it clear she wasn't cooking, about work, about his campaign, about this amazing creative partnership he developed with his team. He mentioned Alyssa's name 4 times in 10 minutes. Lauren ate her pad thai and said nothing. "You're quiet," Blake said, the same observation he'd been making more frequently. Not concerned. Just noting a deviation from expected performance. "I'm tired," Lauren said. "You're always tired lately. Work's been demanding. Maybe you should ask for less responsibility. You don't have to take on every project they throw at you, you know." Lauren looked at him across the table, really looked at him. Saw the way he framed her professional growth as a problem to be solved, her ambition as something exhausting that affected him. "Actually," she said, "I just accepted a promotion. I'll be leading a major cross-to-departmental initiative starting next month." Blake's expression flickered, surprise, then something that looked almost like annoyance. "You didn't mention you were up for a promotion. You didn't ask." "When did this happen?" "Last week. Richard offered it to me and I said yes." "Without talking to me about it?" Lauren felt something sharp and clear cut through the fog of their conversation. "Why would I need to talk to you about my career decisions?" "Because we're in a relationship, Lauren. These things affect both of us." "How does my promotion affect you?" Blake floundered. "Well, you'll be busier. We'll have less time together. You asked for space 2 weeks ago. Said you needed to focus on your career." "That's different." "How?" "It just is." Lauren set down her fork. "Blake, let's be honest. You don't actually care that I'll be busier. You care that I made a decision without checking with you first. You care that I'm investing in myself instead of managing your comfort." Blake's face hardened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" They stared at each other across the table, and Lauren saw the moment Blake realized he was losing control of the narrative, saw him scramble to reassert it. "Look," he said, his voice shifting to something placating, "I'm happy for you, really. I just wish you'd told me sooner. We're supposed to be partners." "Are we?" Lauren asked quietly. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Never mind." She stood, collected her plate, and went to the kitchen. Blake followed her. "Don't do that," he said. "Don't say something like that and then just walk away." Lauren rinsed her plate, put it in the dishwasher, turned to face him. "Blake, I'm exhausted. Can we just not do this right now?" "Not do what? Have a conversation about our relationship?" "Have a fight about my promotion." "I'm not fighting with you." "Then what are you doing?" Blake opened his mouth, closed it. He didn't know. Lauren could see it on his face. He'd been operating on autopilot for so long, following scripts of how their interactions were supposed to go, that he didn't actually know what he was doing. "I just want things to go back to normal," he said finally. "They are normal," Lauren said. "This is who I've always been. You just never paid attention." She walked past him, grabbed her laptop and went to the bedroom. Closed the door, sat on the bed and opened her computer and tried to focus on work while her heart hammered in her chest. That was the closest she'd come to confronting him. The closest she'd come to saying what she actually knew. But she'd pulled back. Because it still wasn't time. Because she still wasn't ready. Because her exit plan wasn't complete yet. Lauren found the apartment on a rainy Saturday morning. Blake was at the office, or said he was at the office, which meant he was probably with Alyssa, and Lauren was supposed to be running errands. Instead, she'd been driving around neighborhoods she liked, getting a feel for where she might want to live when this was all over. The building was nothing special from the outside. A converted warehouse in a quiet neighborhood, brick facade, big windows. There was a for rent sign in one of the ground floor units. Lauren called the number on a whim. The landlord answered, said he could show it to her right now if she was free. 15 minutes later, Lauren was standing in a one-bedroom apartment with exposed brick walls, high ceilings, and light pouring in through windows that overlooked a small courtyard. It was small. It was more than she'd planned to spend. It was perfect. "I'll take it," Lauren said. The landlord, a middle-aged man named Tom who seemed surprised by her decisiveness, blinked. "Don't you want to think about it? See some other places?" "No, this is the one." "Okay then, I'll need first month's rent, security deposit, and some basic information for the background check." "When are you looking to move in?" Lauren did the math in her head. Their current lease was up for renewal in 6 weeks. Blake would want to re-sign. He hadn't mentioned moving, hadn't suggested anything was changing. He was planning to keep things exactly as they were, living with Lauren while maintaining whatever he had with Alyssa, keeping all his options open. 6 weeks, Lauren said. Maybe sooner, depending on some logistics. "Works for me. Let me get the paperwork started." Lauren signed the lease that afternoon, used her new bank account for the deposits, gave Tom her personal email, not the one Blake had access to, made sure there was no paper trail that would lead back to their shared life before she was ready. When she left, she sat in her car and looked up at the building, her apartment, her choice, and felt something that had been knotted tight in her chest for weeks finally loosen. She had a place to go. She had a plan. She had a life that existed independent of Blake Morrison and his careful betrayals. All she needed now was the right moment to tell him. The moment came from an unexpected source, Blake's mother. Diane called Lauren on a Tuesday afternoon. Lauren almost didn't answer. She was in the middle of a meeting, but something made her excuse herself and take the call. "Lauren, honey," Diane's warm voice came through. "How are you?" "I'm good, Diane. How are you?" "Oh, you know, busy with the usual. Listen, I'm calling because Richard is retiring next month. Blake's father, I mean. And we're having a family dinner to celebrate, just close family, and of course I want you and Blake there." Lauren's mind went blank for a second. A family dinner. With Blake? Playing the role of the happy couple in front of his entire family while he was actively replacing her. "When is it?" Lauren asked, buying time. 2 weeks from Saturday. I know it's not much notice, but we just finalized the date. You two can make it, can't you? Lauren thought about saying no, thought about making an excuse, avoiding the whole excruciating situation. But then something else occurred to her. This was the moment. This was the catalyst she'd been waiting for without knowing it. Because Blake would have to go to this dinner, would have to show up and perform being a loving son, a present partner, would have to sit across from his family and lie to everyone, including himself, about the state of their relationship. And Lauren would be there to watch it, to bear witness to his performance, to decide in real time whether she was going to keep playing her part or whether she was finally going to speak. "We'll be there," Lauren said. "Wonderful. I'm so glad. You know how much you mean to us, sweetheart." The endearment hit harder than it should have. Diane had always been kind to her, had welcomed her into the family without reservation, had told Lauren more than once that she was the best thing that ever happened to Blake. Lauren had invested 6 years in that relationship too, in being the perfect almost daughter-in-law, in remembering birthdays and showing up to family events and being gracious and warm and present. And she was about to lose all of it. "I'm looking forward to it," Lauren lied. "Thank you for inviting us." When she hung up, she sat in her car in the parking lot and let herself feel it. The grief, the loss, the ending that was coming whether she was ready or not. Then she went back inside and returned to her meeting and did her job and drove home and told Blake about the dinner. He looked uncomfortable but agreed to go, probably because saying no would require an explanation he didn't want to give. 2 weeks. Lauren had 2 weeks to prepare for the dinner that would change everything. 2 weeks to decide who she was going to be when she finally stopped being silent. The 2 weeks before the dinner passed in a strange suspension of time. Days felt both endless and too short. Lauren moved through them with a peculiar double consciousness. On the surface, everything looked normal. She went to work, came home, existed in the same physical space as Blake. But underneath, she was counting down to something she couldn't quite name yet. Not an ending, exactly. More like a reckoning. Blake seemed oblivious to the shift. Or maybe he just didn't care enough to look closely. He'd settled into the new rhythm of their relationship. The one where Lauren was present but distant, available but not accessible. It seemed to suit him fine. It meant he could come and go without explanation, maintain his double life without friction, keep Lauren as the stable foundation while he explored whatever Alyssa represented. Security and excitement. Safety and risk. He wanted both, and he'd structured his life to have them. What he hadn't anticipated was that Lauren had stopped wanting to be anyone's safety net. She spent the 2 weeks preparing in ways Blake couldn't see. She packed a box of essentials and left it in Monica's garage. Important documents, sentimental items, things she couldn't replace. She took photos of the apartment, documenting what was hers in case there were disputes later. She changed her mailing address for her bank statements and her new work documents. She built the infrastructure of separation piece by piece, quietly, methodically. At work, she threw herself into the new initiative with an intensity that surprised even her. Richard had been right. She was good at this. Not just competent, but genuinely skilled. The project required her to interface with department heads, present to senior leadership, make decisions that affected the entire company. And Lauren discovered something unexpected. She liked being visible. She liked using her voice. She liked taking up space. The professional Lauren and the personal Lauren were becoming two different people. At work, she was confident, direct, authoritative. At home, she was still performing a version of herself that kept the peace, that didn't rock the boat, that made Blake's deception easier. But the distance between those two versions was shrinking. Lauren could feel it. The woman she was becoming at work was bleeding into the woman she was at home, making it harder and harder to maintain the performance. 3 days before the dinner, Blake stayed out all night for the first time. He texted around 11. Something came up with the campaign. Might crash at the office. Don't wait up. Lauren read the text twice. She knew exactly what it meant. Knew he wasn't at the office. Knew this was a threshold being crossed, a new level of disrespect, a test to see what she'd tolerate. She typed back, "Okay." That was all. Just, okay. She went to bed alone and slept better than she had in weeks. When Blake came home the next morning, showering before he even said hello, Lauren was already dressed for work. She was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and her laptop, reviewing project timelines. Blake emerged from the bathroom, cautious. Testing the temperature of the room. "Hey," he said. "Hey," Lauren replied, not looking up from her screen. "Sorry about last night. Things got crazy with the campaign, and it just made more sense to crash at the office than drive home at 3 in the morning." Lauren nodded. Still didn't look at him. "Makes sense." Blake hovered, clearly expecting more. A question. An accusation. Something. Lauren gave him nothing. Finally, he said, "You're not mad?" Lauren looked up then, met his eyes with an expression of perfect neutrality. "Why would I be mad? You're an adult. You can make your own decisions." Something flickered across Blake's face. Confusion, maybe. Or disappointment that she wasn't playing the role he'd expected. The jealous girlfriend. The suspicious partner, the woman who cared enough to fight. "Okay," he said slowly. "Well, I'm gonna grab some sleep before work." "Sure," Lauren said, and went back to her laptop. She heard him go into the bedroom, heard the door close, and she sat there at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around her coffee mug, and felt powerful in a way she'd never experienced before. She didn't need Blake to tell her the truth. She didn't need his confession or his apology. She knew what was happening, and his lies only confirmed what she already understood about his character. The not knowing had been excruciating. But the knowing? The knowing was clarifying. Lauren had spent 6 years trying to be the right kind of woman for Blake Morrison. The kind who didn't ask too many questions, who didn't make him feel guilty, who gave him room to be himself. But Blake had used that room to build a life that didn't include her. and Lauren was done making space for someone who'd already moved out. 2 days before the dinner, Lauren had lunch with Monica. They sat in the same coffee shop where Lauren had first told her about Blake's cheating. Monica ordered a sandwich she didn't eat, too focused on studying Lauren's face. "You seem different," Monica said. "Different how?" "Calmer. Like you've made a decision." Lauren took a sip of her tea. "I have." "What decision?" "I'm leaving him. After the dinner." Monica leaned back in her chair. "You're going to do it at his father's retirement dinner?" "No, I'm not going to make a scene, but I'm going to go, and I'm going to watch him perform being a good boyfriend in front of his family, and then I'm going to leave, maybe that night, maybe the next morning, but soon." "Do you have a place?" "I signed a lease 3 weeks ago." Monica's eyebrows went up. "You've been planning this." "I've been preparing," Lauren corrected. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" Lauren considered the question. "Planning implies I'm orchestrating something. Preparing just means I'm making sure I'm ready when the moment comes." "And the moment is the dinner." "I think so. I don't know exactly how it's going to happen, but I know it's going to." Monica reached across the table and squeezed Lauren's hand. "I'm proud of you. You know that, right?" Lauren felt her throat tighten. "I haven't done anything yet." "You've done everything. You've stopped abandoning yourself. That's not nothing." The words landed with unexpected weight. Stopped abandoning yourself? That's exactly what it was. For 6 years, Lauren had been leaving herself behind piece by piece, and she'd called it love. She'd called it compromise. She'd called it being mature. But it had just been abandonment, self-erasure dressed up as devotion. "I'm scared," Lauren admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of what comes after, of being alone, of starting over." Monica nodded. "That's normal." "Is it worth it? The fear, the disruption, the loss? Is staying worth it?" Monica countered. Lauren thought about Blake coming home after being out all night with Alyssa, smelling like someone else's soap. Thought about the way he looked through her instead of at her. Thought about the years she'd spent making herself smaller and quieter and less demanding, and how none of it had been enough because the problem wasn't her. The problem was that Blake didn't want to see her. He wanted a supporting character, not a partner. "No," Lauren said. "Staying isn't worth it." "Then you have your answer." That night, Lauren and Blake had dinner together for the first time in weeks. Blake suggested it. Said they should probably reconnect before the family dinner, so they didn't seem weird in front of his parents. The phrasing was revealing. He didn't want to reconnect because he missed her or because he valued their relationship. He wanted to reconnect so they could perform better in public, but Lauren agreed. She even suggested the restaurant, the nice Italian place where Blake had taken her on their first anniversary. If this was going to be their last dinner together, she wanted it to be somewhere that meant something. Even if the meaning was only hers now. They sat across from each other in a corner booth, and Lauren watched Blake scroll through his phone while they waited for their food. He was texting someone, smiling at the screen in a way he never smiled at her anymore. "Who are you texting?" Lauren asked. Not accusatory, just curious. Blake looked up, startled. "What? Oh, just work stuff. On a Friday night? The campaign doesn't stop for weekends." He pocketed his phone, made a visible effort to be present. "Sorry, I'm here now." The food came. They ate in near silence. Blake made a few attempts at conversation, asked about her work. Lauren gave short, factual answers, asked about his campaign. Blake came alive, talking for 10 minutes straight about creative concepts and client feedback and his vision for the brand. He mentioned Alyssa twice, caught himself the second time, seemed to realize he was talking about her too much, and changed the subject. Lauren just listened, watched him, cataloged this moment for future reference. This was who Blake was when he thought he'd won, when he thought he had everything arranged exactly as he wanted it. Comfortable and careless and completely unaware that the woman sitting across from him had already left in every way that mattered. "You've been really understanding lately," Blake said, pouring more wine. "About me needing space, about work being crazy. I appreciate it." "You're welcome," Lauren said. "I know I haven't been the most attentive boyfriend recently." Lauren took a sip of her wine. "No, you haven't." The bluntness seemed to surprise him. "I'll do better. After this campaign wraps up, things will calm down." Will they? Yeah, of course. Lauren set down her glass, looked at him directly. Blake, do you love me? The question hung in the air between them. Blake's face went through several expressions. Surprise, discomfort, calculation? Of course I do, he said finally. Why would you ask that? Just wondering. Lauren, what's going on? You've been acting strange for weeks. Strange how? I don't know. Distant, different. Maybe I'm just tired. Of what? Lauren almost said it. Almost laid it all out right there in the restaurant. The message she'd seen, the lies she'd been watching, the double life he'd been living. Almost told him that she knew everything and she was done. But something held her back. Some instinct that this wasn't the moment yet. That she needed to wait just a little longer. Of work? She said instead. The new project is demanding. Blake visibly relaxed. Right. The promotion thing. How's that going? Really well, actually. Good. That's good. He signaled for the check. We should probably get going. Early morning tomorrow. They drove home in silence. Blake spent the drive on his phone again. Lauren looked out the window and thought about the fact that this would probably be one of the last times they drove anywhere together. When they got home, Blake went straight to the bedroom. Lauren stayed in the living room, sitting in the dark, listening to the sounds of him getting ready for bed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Monica. You okay? Lauren typed back. Almost there. The night before the dinner, Lauren couldn't sleep. She lay in bed next to Blake, who was deeply asleep, breathing evenly, unburdened by guilt or conscience. And Lauren stared at the ceiling and ran through scenarios in her head. What would she say? How would it happen? Would Blake confess if confronted directly? Or would he deny everything? Would his family believe her if things fell apart publicly? Or would they think she was being dramatic? And underneath all those tactical questions was a deeper one. Who did she want to be when this was over? What kind of person did she want to be in the moment of confrontation? Angry? Dignified? Cold? Vulnerable? Lauren realized she didn't want to be any performed version of herself. She just wanted to be honest, to speak plainly, to say what was true and let Blake and his family and everyone else make of it what they would. She'd spent 6 years managing other people's perceptions of her. She was done. When morning came, Blake was already up, getting ready. Lauren found him in the bathroom, shaving, looking at his reflection with the kind of attention he usually reserved for important meetings. Big day? Lauren asked from the doorway. Blake glanced at her. Just want to look good for the family thing. Right. What are you wearing? Lauren hadn't thought about it. I don't know. Does it matter? I mean, it's a nice dinner. My mom went to a lot of trouble. Translation. Don't embarrass me. Look the part. Play your role. I'll figure something out, Lauren said. She showered, dried her hair, put on a dress Blake had once said he loved. Navy blue, simple, flattering. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Same face, same features, but different eyes. Clearer, steadier, ready. Blake was waiting by the door, keys in hand, when Lauren emerged. You look nice, he said. It sounded automatic. Thanks. They drove to his parents' house in separate cars. Lauren had insisted, said she might need to leave early for a work call. Blake had accepted the explanation without question, which told Lauren everything she needed to know about how little attention he was actually paying. The whole drive, Lauren's hands were steady on the wheel. Her breathing was even. She felt strangely calm, like she was moving towards something inevitable and right, even though it was going to hurt. Blake's parents lived in a comfortable suburban house with a manicured lawn and seasonal decorations that Diane changed religiously. Tonight, there were lights strung in the trees, making the whole front yard glow warmly. Lauren parked on the street, sat in her car for a moment, watched Blake get out of his car, straighten his jacket, check his phone one more time before heading to the door. This was it. The moment she'd been moving toward for weeks without fully knowing it. Lauren got out of her car, walked up the path, and rang the doorbell just as Blake did. Diane answered, her face lighting up when she saw them. There you are. Come in, come in. Everyone's already here. The house smelled like roasted meat and wine and the vanilla candles Diane loved. Voices drifted from the dining room. Blake's father's laugh. His sister's voice. The comfortable sounds of family. Lauren felt a pang of grief so sharp it took her breath away. She was about to lose this, all of it. These people who'd welcomed her, who'd made space for her, who'd treated her like she already belonged. But she'd never really belonged. She'd been auditioning, performing, trying to earn a permanent place by being perfect. And Blake had been taking that performance for granted while building a life with someone else. Diane hugged Lauren, warm and genuine. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Come say hello to everyone." The dining room was full. Blake's father Richard at the head of the table, his sister Caroline and her husband, his younger brother Jake, all of them dressed nicely, smiling, glasses of wine already poured. Everyone greeted Blake and Lauren together, as a unit, as a couple. It felt like a lie Lauren was complicit in just by standing there. Blake's hand found the small of her back. Possessive, performative. For the benefit of the audience. Lauren stepped away slightly, subtle enough that only Blake would notice. She saw his jaw tighten. Dinner started with toasts. To Richard's retirement. To new beginnings. To family. Everyone raised their glasses and drank and laughed and told stories about Richard's long career. Lauren sat next to Blake and felt like she was watching the scene from underwater. Everything was muffled, distant, happening to someone else. Blake was in his element. Charming, funny, the center of attention when he wanted to be, graciously deferential when appropriate. He played the role of devoted son and loving boyfriend with practiced ease. And Lauren watched him and thought about how good he was at this. At performance. At saying what people wanted to hear, at being what people wanted to see, at maintaining surfaces while the reality underneath rotted away. Halfway through the main course, Caroline asked about Blake's campaign. "How's that big project going? The one you've been working so hard on?" Blake launched into an explanation, talked about creative challenges, client demands, late nights at the office. He was animated, engaged, fully present in a way he never was when he talked to Lauren anymore. "You must barely see each other," Diane said, looking between Blake and Lauren with concern. "All these late nights." "It's been an adjustment," Blake said smoothly. "But Lauren's been so understanding. She gets it." All eyes turned to Lauren, waiting for her to confirm, to play her part, to make this comfortable for everyone. Lauren set down her fork. "Actually, I'm not sure I do get it." The table went quiet. Blake's hand found her knee under the table. Squeezed. Warning. Lauren moved her leg away. "What do you mean?" Diane asked gently. Lauren looked at Blake. Really looked at him. Saw the panic starting to creep into his eyes, the realization that she was off script. "I mean," Lauren said carefully, "I think Blake and I have different understandings of what's been happening the past few months." "Lauren," Blake said quietly, "not now." "When then?" Blake's face was flushing. His family was looking between them, confused and uncomfortable. Caroline tried to help. "Maybe we should talk about something else." But Lauren was done protecting Blake's comfort, done managing everyone else's ease at the expense of her own truth. "Blake's been distant," Lauren said. Her voice was steady. "Calm. Late nights, locked phone, emotionally checked out. And I've been quiet about it because I didn't want to cause problems. Didn't want to be the difficult girlfriend who makes accusations." "Jesus Christ, Lauren," Blake hissed. "But I'm tired of being quiet," Lauren continued. "I'm tired of pretending I don't see what's happening." Diane looked stricken. "What's happening?" Lauren turned to her, felt a wave of genuine affection and sadness for this woman who'd been nothing but kind to her. "I think you should ask Blake that question." All eyes went to Blake. He looked cornered, angry, desperate. "This is ridiculous," he said, standing up. "You're making a scene." "I'm stating facts." "You're being paranoid." "Am the first?" Lauren stood too. She was surprised by how calm she felt. How clear. "Blake, you've been having an affair, or at the very least an emotional relationship with someone else while still living with me, still accepting my support, still letting me believe we had a future together." The table erupted in shocked murmurs. Blake's father said, "Blake, what is she talking about?" Blake turned on Lauren, his face twisted with anger and panic. "You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing me. This is my father's retirement dinner and you're ruining it with your insecurity." "Don't do that," Lauren said quietly. Don't make this about me being insecure when you know exactly what you've been doing. I haven't done anything wrong. You've been cheating on me, with Alyssa from your work. Blake's face went white. The name confirmation hit like a physical blow. Caroline gasped. Jake said, "Holy shit." Diane stood up, her hand over her mouth. Blake scrambled. It's not what you think. What is it then? Lauren asked. Because from where I'm standing, you've been building a relationship with her while slowly exiting ours. You stay out all night, you shower the second you get home. You have a password on your phone you never had before. You talk about her constantly. You light up when she texts you and go dark when you're with me, so please, tell me what I'm misunderstanding. Blake opened his mouth, closed it. He had no answer that wouldn't confirm what Lauren had just laid out. His father's voice cut through the silence. Blake, is this true? Blake looked at his father, at his mother, at his siblings, all of them staring at him, waiting for an explanation, and Lauren watched him make a choice in real time. Watched him decide that the best defense was offense. You know what? Blake said, his voice rising. Maybe I have gotten close to someone else. Maybe I have been pulling away. You want to know why, Lauren? Because you're suffocating, you're boring, you never want to do anything. Spontaneous. You're so obsessed with routines and schedules and making sure everything is perfect that there's no room to just live. I feel like I'm drowning in this relationship. The words were designed to wound, to shift blame, to make Lauren the problem. And a month ago, they would have worked. A month ago, Lauren would have internalized them, wondered if he was right, apologized for not being enough. But now she just felt sad. Sad that this was who Blake was. Someone who would try to justify betrayal by attacking the person he betrayed. Blake? Diane said, her voice shaking. Stop talking. But Blake was spiraling now, desperate to regain control of the narrative. I'm not the villain here, I'm just being honest. Lauren wants me to be someone I'm not. She wants me to be content with this small, predictable life, and I'm not. I want more. I deserve more. You're right, Lauren said quietly. Blake stopped mid-rant. What? You deserve more. You deserve someone who excites you, who matches your energy, who makes you feel alive. Lauren picked up her purse from the back of her chair. And I deserve someone who sees me as a partner instead of a supporting character. Someone who values stability instead of resenting it. Someone who doesn't confuse my kindness with weakness or my patience with stupidity. She turned to Diane. I'm so sorry. I didn't come here to ruin this dinner, but I couldn't sit here and pretend anymore. Diane's eyes were wet. Sweetheart, you have nothing to apologize for. Lauren felt her own eyes start to sting. She blinked the tears back. Thank you, for everything, for welcoming me, for being kind. I'll miss you. Lauren, wait, Caroline said, standing. You don't have to leave. I do, Lauren said. I really do. She looked at Blake one last time. He was standing there, face red, hands clenched, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. I saw the text message, Lauren said. From Alyssa, 3 weeks ago. I've known this whole time. I just needed to be sure before I walked away. And now I am. Blake's expression crumbled. The realization of how thoroughly he'd been outmaneuvered, how long Lauren had been watching him, how completely he'd underestimated her. Lauren, he started. We can talk about this. We can work through this. No, Lauren said simply. We can't, because you don't want to work through it. You want to have both of us. You want Alyssa's excitement and my stability. You want your affair and your comfortable home life. And I'm not interested in being half of your double life. She walked toward the door. Blake followed. Where are you going? Home, to get my things. I have an apartment. I'm moving out. You have a what? When did you... You've been planning this. I've been preparing to leave someone who left me months ago. You just didn't bother to tell me. Lauren opened the front door. The night air was cool and sharp and clarifying. Lauren, please, don't do this. She turned back one more time. Saw him standing in the doorway of his parents' house, backlit by the warm glow of the home he'd grown up in, looking lost and desperate, and still somehow expecting her to fix this for him. I'm not doing this, Blake. You did this. I'm just finally choosing myself. She walked to her car, got in, started the engine. and drove away from Blake Morrison and 6 years of making herself smaller and the life she'd thought she wanted but had never really examined. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing stayed steady. She felt clear and strong and more herself than she had in years. The apartment was dark when Lauren got back. Blake's car wasn't there yet. She had maybe 30 minutes before he showed up to try to talk her out of leaving. She moved quickly and efficiently, grabbed the suitcases from the back of the closet, started packing clothes, toiletries, the things she'd need immediately. Everything else could wait. Everything else could be sorted out later, with mediators and logistics and the cold practicalities of disentangling shared lives. Right now, she just needed to leave. She was zipping up her second suitcase when she heard Blake's key in the lock. He came in like a storm, angry and desperate in equal measure. "What the hell was that, Lauren? You humiliated me in front of my entire family." Lauren didn't look up from her packing. "I told the truth. You ambushed me. You've been lying to me for months. I gave you the truth in front of people who love you. That's not an ambush, that's a gift." "A gift? Are you kidding me right now?" Lauren zipped up the suitcase, straightened, looked at him. "Blake, I could have done this so many different ways. I could have screamed at you the night I saw that text. I could have thrown you out. I could have told everyone what you were doing and made you the villain. But I didn't. I stayed quiet and I watched and I gave you every opportunity to be honest with me. And you didn't take it. You just kept lying. Because I knew you'd react like this." "Like what? Like someone who has self-respect? Like someone who won't tolerate being replaced in her own relationship?" Blake ran his hands through his hair, tried a different approach. "Look, I made mistakes. I got confused. It was stupid. It didn't mean anything. If it didn't mean anything, why did you risk everything for it?" Blake had no answer. Lauren picked up her suitcase. "I'm going to stay with Monica tonight. I'll come back next week when you're at work to get the rest of my things. We can figure out the lease and the furniture and all of that later." "You can't just leave." "Yes, I can. That's exactly what I can do." "Lauren, please." His voice cracked. "Don't do this. We can fix this. I'll end things with Alyssa. I'll do therapy. I'll do whatever you want." Lauren set the suitcase down, walked over to Blake, looked at him with something that wasn't quite pity but was close. "Blake, you don't want to fix this. You want me to forgive you so you don't have to feel like the bad guy. You want me to stay so you don't have to be alone or start over or explain to people why we broke up. But you don't actually want me. You haven't wanted me for a long time. You just wanted the life I made comfortable for you." "That's not true. When's my birthday, Blake?" He blinked. "What?" "My birthday. When is it?" Blake stared at her. His mouth opened, closed. He didn't know. Lauren felt the last small part of her that had been hoping for something different finally let go. "It's August 14th, she said quietly. "We've been together for 6 years and you don't know when my birthday is." "I'm bad with dates." "You know Alyssa's. You mentioned it last month. Said you were going to get her something nice because she'd been such a good collaborator." Blake's face went red. Caught. "You see what you want to see, Blake. You pay attention to what matters to you, and I haven't mattered to you in a very long time. Maybe I never did." She picked up her suitcase again, grabbed her laptop bag. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I really do. I hope Alyssa is everything you want. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but I'm done trying to be enough for someone who's determined to see me as not enough." Lauren walked to the door. Blake didn't try to stop her this time. She paused in the doorway. One last moment in the apartment that had been her home for 3 years. The space where she'd built a life that turned out to be a performance. "Goodbye, Blake." She didn't wait for his response. Lauren loaded her suitcases into her car, got in, and drove to Monica's apartment across town. Monica was waiting at the door when Lauren pulled up. Must have been watching for her. She helped carry the suitcases inside without asking questions. Just pulled Lauren into a tight hug and held on. "You did it," Monica said. "I did it," Lauren confirmed. Her voice broke on the last word. And finally, in the safety of her best friend's apartment, Lauren let herself cry. Not for Blake, not for the relationship she'd lost, for the 6 years she'd spent disappearing, for the woman she'd almost become permanently, for the voice she'd almost lost forever. She cried until she was empty, until there was nothing left but a strange, fragile clarity. And then Monica made tea and they sat on the couch and Lauren told her everything. Every detail of the dinner, every word of the confrontation, every moment of the ending she'd been building toward for weeks. "How do you feel?" Monica asked when Lauren finished. Lauren considered the question honestly. Sad, relieved, scared, free, all of it at once. That sounds about right. Did I do the right thing? Do you think you did? Lauren thought about Blake's face when she'd named Alyssa, about the way his family had looked at him when the truth came out, about the moment she'd walked out the door and felt lighter than she had in years. "Yeah," Lauren said. "I think I did." 3 days later, Lauren moved into her new apartment. Monica helped. So did a couple of coworkers from the new initiative team who'd somehow heard she was moving and offered to help without asking why. Richard stopped by with a housewarming plant and a card signed by half the office. Blake texted twice during the move. Once to say he'd left her stuff in boxes by the door of their old apartment. Once to ask if they could talk. Lauren responded to the first message with a thank you. Ignored the second. She didn't owe him closure. Didn't owe him another conversation where he'd try to rewrite history or extract forgiveness he hadn't earned. She owed him nothing. By evening, Lauren's new apartment was full of boxes but starting to feel like hers. Monica ordered pizza and they sat on the floor eating it because Lauren didn't have furniture yet beyond a mattress and a small table. "What's next?" Monica asked. Lauren looked around the space. Small but full of light. Empty but full of possibility. "I have no idea," she said. "And that feels kind of amazing." Work became Lauren's anchor in the weeks that followed. The new initiative was demanding in the best way. It required everything she had. Focus and strategy and leadership and vision. It left no room for dwelling on the past or spiraling into doubt. Richard had been right. Lauren was good at this. Better than good. She could see the whole system, could identify bottlenecks before they became crises, could manage both technical details and interpersonal dynamics with equal skill. And she was learning to use her voice. To speak up in meetings, to disagree when she thought someone was wrong, to claim her ideas instead of offering them tentatively and hoping someone else would validate them. One morning, 6 weeks after she'd left Blake, Lauren was presenting the initiative's progress report to the executive team. She stood at the front of the conference room, running through slides she'd prepared, fielding questions with confidence. The CEO asked about timeline risks. Lauren answered directly, outlined mitigation strategies, didn't hedge or soften her expertise. When the presentation ended, the CEO said, "This is excellent work. The board is going to be very impressed." Richard caught Lauren's eye from across the table, smiled. After the meeting, he pulled her aside. "You've really come into your own these past couple of months," he said. Lauren felt a flush of pride. "Thank you. The project's been challenging but rewarding." "I'm not just talking about the project. I'm talking about you. You're different, more present, more confident. I guess a lot has changed in my personal life." "I heard." Richard's expression was kind. "For what it's worth, I think whoever let you go made a significant mistake." Lauren smiled. "I think I'm the one who did the letting go. But thank you." Richard nodded. "Well, their loss is our gain. Keep up the excellent work." Walking back to her desk, Lauren felt something unfamiliar. It took her a moment to identify it. Pride, not in what someone else thought of her, not how well she'd played a role, but in what she'd actually accomplished, in the person she was becoming. 2 months after the breakup, Lauren ran into Diane Morrison at a farmer's market. Lauren saw her first, had a split second to decide whether to approach or slip away unnoticed. She approached. "Diane," she said. Diane turned. Her face went through several emotions in quick succession. Surprise, sadness, something like relief. "Lauren." She set down the tomatoes she'd been examining. "How are you?" "I'm okay. I'm good, actually. How are you?" Diane studied her face. "You look well." "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, navigating the awkwardness of caring about each other while being connected to something painful. "I owe you an apology," Diane said finally. "You don't." "I do, for the dinner, for not seeing what Blake was doing, for not protecting you better." Lauren felt her throat tighten. "Diane, you were nothing but kind to me. You have nothing to apologize for." "How are you really doing?" Diane asked, her eyes searching Lauren's face. I'm really doing okay, Lauren said honestly. It was hard at first, but I think leaving was the right thing. For both of us, probably. Diane nodded, hesitated, then said, Blake and that girl, they're together now, officially. Lauren felt a small pang, not jealousy, just the ghost of what might have been, the life she'd thought she was building that turned out to be built on sand. I hope he's happy, Lauren said. She meant it. Diane's expression softened. You're a better person than he deserves. I told him that, after you left. I told him he'd lost someone irreplaceable and he was a fool for not seeing it sooner. What did he say? Nothing that mattered. Diane reached out, squeezed Lauren's hand. I miss you. I know I don't have a right to, but I do. I miss you too, Lauren admitted. They hugged. Brief but genuine. When they pulled apart, Diane said, If you ever need anything at all, please call me. I will. Lauren knew she probably wouldn't. Not because she didn't care about Diane, but because moving forward meant letting go of all of it. The family she'd almost had. The life she'd almost lived. The version of herself she'd almost become permanently. Walking back to her car, Lauren felt a sweet sadness. Not regret. Just the natural grief of endings, even necessary endings, even good endings. She'd loved Blake's family, had wanted to belong to them. But she belonged to herself now, and that was enough. 4 months after leaving Blake, Lauren woke up in her apartment on a Saturday morning with nowhere to be and nothing scheduled. She made coffee, sat by the window in the small reading nook she'd created with a second-hand chair and a lamp Monica had given her. The apartment was hers now, fully furnished with things she'd chosen. Decorated with art she actually liked instead of art that matched Blake's aesthetic. Full of quiet and space and possibility. Her phone buzzed. A text from Monica. Want to try that new hiking trail tomorrow? Lauren smiled. Typed back. Yes. She set her phone down. Picked up a book she'd been reading. One of the books she'd wanted to read for years but Blake had dismissed as boring. It wasn't boring. It was beautiful. Lauren read for an hour. Then made breakfast. Did some laundry. Rearranged the plants on her windowsill. Small, mundane tasks that felt profoundly hers. In the afternoon, she went for a walk in her neighborhood. Explored streets she hadn't noticed before. Found a small bookstore and spent an hour browsing. Bought 2 novels and a collection of poetry. The woman at the counter smiled at her. Good choices. Thank you, Lauren said. Walking home with her bag of books, Lauren realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this content. Not happy in the fireworks way, but content. Settled, at peace with exactly where she was. She didn't know what her future looked like. Didn't know if she'd fall in love again, or if she'd want to. Didn't know where her career would take her, or whether she'd stay in this city or move somewhere new. But she knew with a certainty that felt like bedrock, that whatever she chose next it would be a real choice, not a default, not a performance, not a role she played because someone else needed her to. For the first time in her adult life, Lauren Hayes belonged entirely to herself. And that was the victory. Not that Blake realized what he'd lost. Not that his family saw the truth. Not that Lauren had gotten revenge or vindication or public recognition. The victory was simply this. Lauren had stopped abandoning herself. Had found her voice again. Had remembered that silence could be strength when you chose it, but only if you still had the capacity to speak. She'd chosen to speak. And then she'd chosen herself. And that choice had changed everything. Lauren unlocked her apartment door, set down her bag of books, looked around the small space that was entirely, completely, perfectly hers. She'd built this. Not the apartment, but the life, the self, the freedom. She'd built it from nothing, from the rubble of what she'd lost, from the raw materials of her own dignity and strength and refusal to stay where she wasn't valued. And she'd keep building, day by day, choice by choice. Because that's what freedom was, not the absence of connection, but the presence of choice, the right to decide for yourself who you'd be and what you'd accept and how you'd love. Lauren had that right now, had claimed it, would never give it away again. She made herself dinner, ate it slowly, savoring every bite. And when night fell and her apartment grew quiet, Lauren didn't feel lonely. She felt whole. The story doesn't end with Lauren finding someone new. Doesn't end with Blake realizing his mistake and begging her to come back. Doesn't end with some dramatic reversal where everything Lauren lost gets returned to her with interest. The story ends here, with Lauren alone in her apartment, with her voice intact, with her choices her own. Because that was always the point. Not winning against Blake, not proving him wrong, not getting revenge. Just reclaiming the fundamental right to choose herself, to speak her truth, to refuse to disappear. Lauren had been silent for so long, had confused silence with peace, accommodation with love, smallness with virtue. But she'd found her voice again. And she'd learned the difference between the silence that erases you and the silence that strengthens you. She'd learned that you can't negotiate your worth with someone determined to undervalue you. She'd learned that the people who truly love you won't require you to disappear to make room for them. She'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to abandon yourself. And she'd learned that freedom doesn't always look like fireworks. Sometimes it looks like a quiet Saturday morning in your own apartment, drinking coffee you made exactly the way you like it, reading a book you chose, planning a life that belongs entirely to you. That was Lauren's victory. And it was enough? More than enough. It was everything. What Lauren discovered, what so many of us have to learn, sometimes painfully, is that there are two kinds of silence in relationships. There's the silence that comes from fear. The silence that swallows questions and ignores red flags and accepts less than you deserve because asking for more feels impossible. That silence is erosion. It's the slow disappearance of self, one swallowed sentence at a time. But there's another kind of silence, the kind that comes from strength. The deliberate choice to observe, to think, to protect your own clarity while you figure out what you actually want. That silence isn't hiding. It's discernment. It's the refusal to react before you're ready. The shift from one to the other is where transformation happens. Lauren spent years in the first kind of silence. She believed that love meant accommodation, that being chosen required being easy, that speaking up about disappointment or loneliness or suspicion would make her too much, too needy, too difficult. So she stayed quiet. She made herself smaller. She swallowed her truth to protect Blake's comfort. And Blake used that silence as permission to drift, to cheat, to replace her while still accepting her care, her labor, her presence. But something shifted in Lauren when she saw that text message. Not immediately, not all at once, but over days and weeks as she watched Blake lie to her face, as she cataloged the patterns of his betrayal, as she sat alone with her own thoughts for the first time in years. She realized she didn't need Blake to admit what he was doing for it to be real. She didn't need proof that would convince a jury. She didn't need his permission to trust her own perception. She just needed the courage to believe herself, to honor what she knew to be true in the deepest part of her being, that she deserved better, that this was wrong, that she had choices. That simple realization, that moral clarity, changed everything. Because once you trust your own perception, once you give yourself permission to believe what you know instead of what you've been told, you stop being a victim of circumstance. You become someone who can choose. And choice is power. Not the power to control other people or orchestrate outcomes, but the power to decide what you'll accept, what you'll tolerate, what you'll call love. Lauren learned this the hard way. She learned that you can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be understanding and still have standards. You can love someone deeply and still choose to leave when that love requires you to abandon yourself. The people who truly belong in your life won't ask you to disappear to make room for them. They won't confuse your patience with permission to take you for granted. They won't mistake your kindness for weakness. Real love, healthy love, mutual love makes space for both people. It doesn't require one person to perpetually shrink so the other can expand. If you're in a relationship where you've stopped voicing your needs because they're always inconvenient, where you've stopped asking questions because you're afraid of the answers, where you've trained yourself to need less and less because needing anything feels like a burden, stop and ask yourself, am I choosing silence, or has silence been chosen for me? Am I being patient, or am I being erased? There's a difference, and that difference matters. Patience is active. It's a conscious choice to wait for the right moment, to observe before acting, to think before speaking. Patience comes from strength, but erasure is passive. It's the slow disappearance that happens when you stop believing your voice matters. When you stop trusting that your needs are legitimate. When you accept being undervalued because you've forgotten what it feels like to be seen. If you recognize yourself in Lauren's story, if you've been making yourself smaller in a relationship that keeps asking you to be less, please hear this. Your voice matters. Your needs are legitimate. Your perception is valid. You don't need someone else's confession to trust what you know. You don't need external proof to honor your own experience. You don't need permission to choose yourself. The hardest part isn't usually the leaving. It's the moment before. The moment when you have to decide whether to keep tolerating what's happening or whether to finally say enough. That moment requires something most of us aren't taught to value. It requires trusting yourself more than you fear being alone. It requires believing you deserve better even when you can't yet see what better looks like. But on the other side of that moment is freedom, not the absence of pain. Freedom still hurts sometimes, but the presence of choice, the dignity of living in alignment with your own values, the peace that comes from no longer abandoning yourself. Lauren found that freedom, not because Blake realized what he'd lost, not because she got revenge or vindication, but because she stopped waiting for external validation and started trusting her own moral clarity. She stopped asking whether she could prove Blake was wrong and started asking what she deserved. And when she answered that question honestly, everything else became clear. You deserve that clarity too. You deserve relationships where you don't have to perform or shrink or silence yourself to be loved. You deserve to take up space, to have needs, to speak your truth and be met with respect instead of dismissal. And if the people in your life can't handle the fullness of who you are, that's information. It's not a reason to make yourself smaller. It's a reason to find people who have room for all of you. Your voice is not too much. Your needs are not unreasonable. Your standards are not too high. You are not the problem for refusing to disappear. Remember that. Hold on to it. Let it be the foundation you build on. Because you deserve a life where your silence is a choice, not a requirement. Where your voice is valued, not tolerated. Where you belong to yourself first. And any relationship you choose to build is an addition to that wholeness, not a subtraction from it. That's the lesson Lauren learned. That's the gift she gave herself. And it's available to you too, whenever you're ready to claim it. If Lauren's story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life or struggled to find your voice in a relationship that kept asking you to be quieter, you're not alone. So many of us have been where Lauren was, making ourselves smaller, swallowing our truth, confusing accommodation with love. This channel, Silent Mind Stories, is dedicated to exploring these quiet struggles, the moments that don't make headlines but change everything, the internal battles between who we've been told to be and who we actually are. The courage it takes to choose yourself when everything in you has been trained to choose someone else. We tell stories about dignity and boundaries and the psychology of relationships, about what it really means to have a voice, and when silence is strength and when it's erosion. These aren't just stories. They're mirrors. Reflections of the experiences so many of us carry but rarely speak about openly. If you want more stories like Lauren's, stories that honor the complexity of being human and the bravery it takes to trust yourself, subscribe to Silent Mind Stories. Hit that notification bell so you never miss when we post something new. And if this story meant something to you, if it helped you see your own situation more clearly or gave you permission to trust your own perception, leave a comment below. Tell us your thoughts. Share your experience if you feel comfortable. Sometimes just naming what we've been through helps us understand it better, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about these quiet, profound questions of how we love and how we lose ourselves and how we find our way back. Remember, your voice matters. Even when you've been silent for so long, you've forgotten what it sounds like. It's still there. Still yours. Still waiting for you to claim it. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it. Exposes cheating partner, toxic love story, powerful relationship story, karma relationship story, heartbreak revenge story, inspirational breakup story.